The death of Emma has turned Miles into a vessel of boiling rage. Thus, he coldly oversees the execution of a former friend and militia comrade. Neville and his Georgian reinforcements show up while Miles is deep in the bottle, pondering the loss of his former love. Neville explains Foster has commissioned him as an officer of the Georgia Federation. They are partners now. Even though Miles wants to kill Neville right there, Neville says they have bigger problems on their hands. Monroe is weaponizing anthrax, and he is using Dr. Ethan Camp to do it. Charlie makes her unwillingness known about working with Neville as Miles and the group board a steam-powered boat to carry out their mission to kidnap Dr. Camp. All that matters to Miles is stopping Monroe, and Neville can help him achieve this. The boat sets out, posing as a fishing vessel. Neville approaches Jason to ask for a truce, but Jason is convinced his father does not care what side he is on, as long as he is in control. Neville clarifies he is with the Georgians because Jason is a traitor. He explains he was forced to flee Philadelphia with Julia, and she developed hypothermia which almost killed her. Joining the Georgian army is what he had to do to survive. Meanwhile, Aaron and Rachel have reached the Thompson tribal lands of the Plains Nation. Finding a village, they beg for food, but a village elder turns them away. In Philadelphia, Randall tries to reason with Monroe, who has not yet recovered from the gunshot wound he sustained in Jasper. He suggests Monroe's recent drastic and violent outbursts might not be the best strategy if they are to diminish the rebels. Reminding Randall that he is merely an it guy, Monroe threatens to rip his throat out if he continues to criticize him. As Miles and his crew gear up for their mission, Neville decides to stay on the boat. Miles and his group kidnap Dr. Camp and blow up his lab before getting back aboard their boat. When Dr. Camp wakes up, Miles and Neville offer an ultimatum. Either he starts working for Georgia, or they will hurt his family. While Miles was kidnapping Dr. Camp, Neville and his men captured Camp's wife and daughter. If he wants to see them again, Camp will have to work for Georgia. Charlie is furious with Miles' callous willingness to kidnap innocent civilians. Later, Nora tells Miles she is transferring to another unit as she is upset with Miles being cool about working with Neville. Late at night, the same village elder comes after Aaron and Rachel for stealing food. He intends on punishing the pair for their crime by shooting them with a pistol. Before he can kill them, Rachel pulls a gun of her own and shoots him. As some villagers race toward the origin of the shot, Aaron and Rachel run for their lives. In the chaos of their escape, Rachel falls down a ravine and snaps her leg. The villagers close in, and Aaron acts quickly, carrying Rachel to a wrecked vehicle that will act as shelter. Knowing they are both dead if he stays, Rachel begs Aaron to go to the tower alone and save himself. But Aaron refuses. Camp begs Charlie to release his young daughter when a Monroe's militia boat stops them for a routine check. Neville and Charlie hide with Dr. Camp in a secret compartment. Neville puts a gun to Camp's head, saying if Georgia cannot have him, no one can. But Charlie is sympathetic to Camp's personal life and places a gun on Neville's head to make sure the doctor stays alive. When the coast is clear, the group steps out of hiding. Neville slaps Charlie for threatening him. Miles slams Neville against the wall of the ship, declaring if he ever touches Charlie again, Miles will kill him. The men from the Nomad village catch up to Rachel in her hideout. When she runs out of bullets attempting to fend them off, they enter the vehicle and place a rifle on her head. Suddenly, Aaron comes out of nowhere and stabs one of the men, only to get tackled by the other and choked. As the Nomad presses his hands into Aaron's throat, Rachel reaches for the dead man's gun and shoots the remaining combatant. Charlie confronts Miles for this whole operation has gone too far. Miles has put a gun to the head of Dr. Camp's daughter so he can have a disease manufactured. She thinks doing so is not any better than Monroe. Miles knows Monroe will stop at nothing to kill them, so he sees his actions as a justified means to an end. There is nothing Monroe will not do. When Miles refuses to let Camp and his family go, Charlie locks him in the bottom of the boat as Jason knocks out Neville with chloroform. Together with Nora, they take over the boat and demand the location of Dr. Camp's family from the boat's captain, making it appear as if their boat has been abandoned. Charlie and her group ambush the boat harboring Dr. Camp's family and rescue them. However, Neville manages to escape, putting an end to the sabotage. As he moves to kill Charlie, Miles suddenly appears and punches Neville. Neville orders Lucas to fire on Miles. Just as he is about to pull the trigger, the militiamen who searched the boat earlier fire from the shore. As an all-out gun battle ensues, Miles, Charlie, Jason, and Nora escape in one of the boats with Dr. Camp and his family. Later, at a rebel camp, Neville barges in on Miles with his gun drawn. Miles confidently lets Neville know he will never find Camp. When Neville threatens to take his troops and weapons back to Georgia, Miles disagrees. The rebels are racking up more victories every day, and that is all President Foster cares about. Neville's power has been stripped from him. Later, Nora approaches Miles alone. When he asks if she is still leaving, Nora offers seduction as her answer. Safe from imminent danger, Rachel urges Aaron to continue to the tower without her. Turning on the power is a cause she is willing to die for. It is important that Aaron, specifically, reach the tower. Dr. Warren's journal is like a spell book. Rachel instructs Aaron to open the journal to page 74, which features an old newspaper article about Aaron. In Ashland, Kentucky, Monroe's militia troops scan the sky with a makeshift radar unit rigged up inside a trailer. At the rebel base, Nora gets ready for patrol after spending the night with Miles. Outside, Neville challenges Jason to kill him. Neville puts his pistol in Jason's hands, but Jason can't pull the trigger. When Jason stalks off, Charlie follows to commiserate. Meanwhile, Aaron is still obsessing over why he is in Dr. Warren's journal. Rachel is concerned about why of all the people to whom Ben could have given his pendant, he chose Aaron. Aaron wants to keep moving, but they are held immobile due to Rachel's injury. Realizing he will never leave her, Rachel pulls out Danny's capsule, intent on making a very dangerous attempt at healing her leg. Back at the rebel base, Charlie and Jason spy militia fighter planes overhead and rush to sound the alarm. Before everyone can get to their respective positions, the militia drones fire on the base. In a flashback to 7 years after the lights went out, Rachel meets with Miles just after leaving her family, promising she knows just as much about turning the light back on as Ben does. Unconvinced, Miles insists he still wants Ben, but Rachel claims Ben has no interest in turning the lights back on, and she does. Back in the present, a deafened Miles wakes up amidst the burning debris of the bombed rebel base. He rushes to help Nora, who is trapped in the rubble. A heavy cloud of smoke has fallen over the camp, and Charlie is nowhere to be found. Neville arrives asking how the militia could have known their location. Most likely, the rebels have a mole in their midst. Nora informs Miles Charlie and Jason went north before the missile attack. When Miles hears Monroe's militia is marching from that direction, he sets off, along with Nora and Neville, to rescue his comrades. Charlie is gasping to breathe, trapped under a pile of rubble, her screams unheard. In an abandoned electronics store, Aaron rebuilds an old Mac according to Dr. Warren's journal, attempting to harness the energy of Danny's capsule. If Aaron can get it to work, the capsule could heal her bone and stitch up her wounds. But if it does not work correctly, it could cook them both from the inside out. After powering and programming the capsule, Aaron places it inside Rachel's wound. Despite her terrible screams, the gaping wound fuses together and the break is miraculously fixed. Unfortunately, the pair are ambushed by a group of hunters led by Lee, who demands to know what just happened. Jeremy is confident that the militia's aerial assault on the rebels was successful. There is no way Miles survived. So, Jeremy urges Monroe to celebrate with his men at a nearby bar, to which he eventually agrees. As the men walk across the street, Monroe's guards are suddenly shot, and a firefight breaks out. Monroe manages to take cover, but now he wonders if he was led into an assassination attempt by Jeremy. Monroe accuses Jeremy of attempting to have him killed. Jeremy was totally exposed during the attack on Monroe, but didn't even get a scratch. Jeremy tries to reason with him, claiming to be his last remaining loyal friend. But Monroe does not listen to him and has him killed by his men. North of the rebel base, Miles and Nora take out a few militiamen, then find Jason barely able to speak. When the attack hit, Charlie was in the bell tower, which collapsed, and he could not find her. Jason tells the three to move on and asks for a gun. Neville sends Miles and Nora on their way, promising to take care of Jason. As Miles and Nora fend off militiamen, Charlie crawls from the rubble of the bell tower, only to realize she is surrounded by Monroe's men. Covered in debris, Charlie stays put and calculates her options. Meanwhile, Neville carries Jason to a safe location, then lays him on the ground to rest for a moment. 7 years after the blackout, Miles and his men search for Ben as Rachel watches, but she knows he will never be found. Rachel and Ben have heard the rumors about Miles, the butcher of Baltimore, and would sacrifice themselves before they would let him harness electricity. Back in the present, Lee takes Rachel and Aaron to his home, hoping they will heal his son Philip, who suffered serious injuries in a fall. Rachel says they can heal his son, but they will have to go back to the store he found them in. Rachel and Aaron lead Blackmore back to the store, where Rachel seizes the first opportunity to knock him out. Aaron is shocked. He thought they were actually going to help the kid, but Rachel knows their mission is to reach the tower, and they cannot get distracted. Rachel reveals her only goal is to give power to Monroe's enemies so the man who killed her son can die. And if Aaron is not going to help, she has no problem leaving him behind. Monroe's men surround Miles and Nora, but the rebels continue to exchange fire against all odds. Miles plans to make a run for it to find Charlie, but Nora begs him not to. Realizing that Miles won't turn back without rescuing Charlie, Nora makes a run for it instead. This momentary distraction is just the break Charlie needs to make a run for it herself. As the two women run across the battlefield, Miles picks off confused militiamen one by one. In a flashback 7 years after the blackout, Rachel is now tied to a chair and still refuses to inform Miles of Ben's whereabouts. Despite his threats, she reveals nothing to the man. Back in the present, Miles manages to rescue Charlie. Somehow, in the heat of battle, Nora has disappeared. Later, Jason wakes up in an Atlanta hospital to find Charlie waiting by his side. He apologizes for leaving Charlie behind. Charlie knows it was not his fault, and the two kiss for the first time. In Philadelphia, Major Oliver informs Monroe that his would-be assassin has been captured. The Georgian spy has confessed to the crime, and violent interrogation has revealed he worked alone. Jeremy had nothing to do with the attempt on Monroe's life. Back in Atlanta, Miles is anxious and outraged to have lost Nora. President Foster tells Miles she is terrified of Monroe's impending assault on her capital. After having lost half of her men in the aerial attack, she expresses her will to surrender unless Miles has a brilliant plan to avert the impending destruction. Back in Philadelphia, Nora has been captured by the militia and she is brought to Monroe. Nora, now in Monroe's custody, is given a dainty white dress in her prison cell and ordered to put it on. Monroe has prepared a nice meal for Nora. As she reluctantly sits at the table, he sweet-talks her in an attempt to extract Miles' current location. Instead of telling him, Nora grabs a bottle of wine and swings it at Monroe. She is skillfully evaded by Monroe. He orders his guards to take Nora away. When Monroe hears about the tower, he brings Randall in for questioning. Knowing that Randall kept him in the dark about the tower, Monroe orders him killed. Claiming that he is the only one who can get Monroe into the tower, Randall wins his stay of execution, promising to turn the lights back on is the least he can do. There are tools and technology there even the president did not know about. When Sanborn confirms Randall's story, Monroe decides to head for Colorado. Rachel and Aaron reach Colorado in the pouring rain. Sanborn escapes Independence Hall and drives Nora out of Philadelphia. In Georgia, Miles interrogates Sanborn, from which he finds out how Monroe has come to know about the tower and is heading there. Outside, when Jason and Charlie kiss in the middle of the street, he sees a man who is revealed to be a militia spy. Knowing Rachel is headed to the tower herself, Miles, along with Charlie, Neville, Jason, Nora, Hudson, Sanborn, and Ramsey, board a helicopter to Colorado. Meanwhile, Monroe takes Randall to the tower to get in, but he is denied access by the system. From the tower, both of them are being monitored by a group of people inside via a security camera. On board, Jason flashes back to Atlanta and his conversation with Billings, who says he has a job for Jason. The helicopter has to land at Fort Hanson to refuel, but when they do, someone murders the pilot, cutting his throat with a distinctive X and messes with the aircraft's wiring. When Miles and Charlie go looking for the killers, they find rebel commander Ramsey on the ground, bleeding out. Miles tries to keep Ramsey alive long enough to figure out who is responsible, but Ramsey dies before he reveals to Miles who the killer is. Rachel and Aaron arrive at the tower, where they discover that Monroe's men are camping outside the entrance. Aaron does not know how they are going to get inside, but Rachel has a plan. That night, she will kill Monroe, and in the ensuing chaos, Aaron will make a run for it, using Dr. Warren's notebook to access the door. With no one around, Miles realizes the murderer has to be among their own group. Nora is nowhere to be found, so Miles collects everyone's weapons in a bag. He throws the bag inside the helicopter, keeping a gun for himself. Then he heads out to search for Nora. He finds her face down on the ground with a bloody arm and a knife, fearing she may have been killed. But Nora is fine except for after effects of Sanborn's drugs. Everyone suspects Nora of the murders, but Miles does not believe it is her. However, she tells Miles that the group could be right. Miles searches through the bag of weapons to check for blood until he notices Jason fumbling with something in his pocket, a bloody switchblade. Jason immediately says someone planted that on him. When Charlie asks Jason whom he was talking to back at the camp, he admits that Billings, a militia spy, asked him to kill Miles in exchange for Charlie's safety, but Jason refused. Miles then pulls out his gun but is prevented from firing by Charlie and Neville, which gives Jason the opportunity to run. Miles searches for Jason to no avail and is eventually stopped by Sanborn, who tells Miles the knife could not possibly be Jason's. It has the initials AMD stamped on it, which stands for Annapolis, Maryland, where the knife was made, and it's unlikely for Jason to have been to the place recently. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out and Sanborn goes down before he can reveal the killer, who turns out to be Hudson. Miles asks Hudson why he did it. Hudson tells Miles the militia has his wife, and they are threatening to kill her unless he works for them. He was the one who gave Monroe Miles' location at Ashland, prompting the drone strike, and he knows killing Miles, Neville, and the others would mean safety for his wife. With no other choice, Miles and Hudson fight to the death. But just as it seems as if Hudson has gained the upper hand, Jason comes out of nowhere and shoots him. When Nora finishes fixing the helicopter, Miles climbs into the co-pilot's seat, and the group resumes their journey to Colorado. Back at the militia camp, Rachel kills one of Monroe's men and takes his uniform. The same night, she goes around looking for Monroe in his tent. Rachel then reveals herself to him and tosses a grenade at him. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn on the notifications so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.